What I have here is your typical 1980s vintage boombox. This one had developed an interesting problem in that it would basically turn itself off after being on for about 5 or 10 minutes and then remain completely silent. I had forgotten that I left it on one night and it came on in the middle of the night, played for about a half a minute, and turned itself back off again. Then it repeated this again a couple hours later, waking me up. Most unusual behavior out of this device. After it's turned itself off, I've obviously still got power because I can move the station knob and see the LED indicating the FM signal still there, but no sound. I've already removed the screws from the back, so now I'll just take the front faceplate off and disconnect the main speaker wire. Connects both of the front speakers to electronics, and set the whole assembly aside. This board is obviously the power board because that's where the power comes in from the back. I'm going to go ahead and pull these two screws off camera and slide that board out. Okay, now I'll just remove that power board, those two screws out. Drop down slightly, pull out. Two connections at the bottom here go to the transformer. This one goes to the battery compartment. These two are signal wires coming from the other two boards. And there's my power board. Fuse checks good. Diode bridge rectifier checks good. This capacitor checks good. Excuse me. This transistor checks good. All these capacitors look okay. They're not domed on the top. No leakage at the bottom. I've candled the whole board. I just found a couple spots that I resoldered where it looked like it might be cracked, but that turned out not to be it. I even pulled this apart and checked this interlock switch for the battery compartment to switch over between AC and DC power. That wasn't it. The fact that it will turn itself off after being on for a little while made me start to suspect the main audio amplifier. Again, I could not find anything wrong with the printed circuit board traces, but there was no output. Yet the board definitely had power. Didn't take me too long to find out that this amplifier is obsolete. Luckily for me, eBay and the Chinese came through in a pinch. And I've got one right here after about 3 weeks of shipping and handling from China. And I'll go ahead and fire up the desoldering tool and get ready to put this one in. If you're doing electronic repair work after a good soldering iron, this is probably your next tool you definitely want to buy. All you really got is a hole in the end that is heated, connected up to this tube here with a squeeze bulb. So you just put this over where you want to desolder. After you've held the bulb in, then as soon as the solder melts, just release the bulb. It pulls the solder back into here. Then move on to the next one. Very neat and easy to use for desoldering most anything, especially on single layer boards. Multi-layer boards gets to be a little bit more difficult. You just have to take your time with it. Sometimes you have to resolder before you can desolder. Time to begin the desoldering process. What I'm doing here is just starting on one side of the amplifier with the desoldering tool, heating it up after I squeeze the bulb in. Then I remove the soldering iron from the solder location, blow the bulb out off camera, and move on to the next one. A very quick, deliberate process with a single layer board. As you can see, it's pretty fast.
Now here we go, the last three. Now I'll wiggle the IC from the other side to see which ones are still soldered. Doing this, I'll take the desoldering tool and just touch it on those ones that are still attached. This momentarily heats them up to make the solder release. Obviously the desoldering process was not 100%. Now I'll just get these last two to release these last two pins that are still slightly caught. And there's the audio amp.
Here's the old one and the new one side by side. The numbers match up and the packages are the same, so I'm going to take it I got exactly what I ordered. So I'll go ahead and first mount the new one to the heatsink with some heat transfer compound and go ahead and solder that one back in.
What I've done here is take a rubber band and hold the amplifier and the heatsink in place. That'll allow me to take the amplifier, push the pins uniformly through the board, and make the soldering process much more uniform and easier, so I don't have to worry about the IC moving around while I'm trying to solder it back. Now it's time to put my new amplifier back in. I'll first solder the one side here, then I'll move to the opposite end of the amplifier and I'll solder the other one. This locks the integrated circuit in place so it can't move. Then I'll just go through and solder each of the ones in the middle. The solder is not being melted by the iron itself, it's being melted by the pin that the iron is touching. This way I don't burn off my rosin and mess up my solder joint. You can see it's a pretty smooth, simple process. Just use minimum amount of heat with the iron to resolder the IC to the board. And I've got 3 more to go. And here's the next to the last. Sorry about bumping the camera. And finally the last one. Note that I got a little bit too much solder with this last one, so I had to go back and clean that one up a little bit off camera. And the new IC is soldered and in place.
Well, I put it all back together, turned it on. It's been playing for over an hour. I never could get more than 10 minutes or so before it would shut itself off and go quiet. Looks like that audio amplifier was definitely the problem. Take care. Y'all have a great day now.